Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is, how do we adapt? That's the focus of It Happened to Me. We help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, hosts Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
With us today is Karen Grinzaid. Karen is an assistant professor of human genetics and the executive director of JScreen, a national online genetic disease screening program based out of Emory University School of Medicine. She has extensive experience in prenatal, pediatric, and adult genetic counseling and testing, as well as clinical care and clinical research. Karen is proud of JScreen's success in helping couples across the United States have healthy babies and in giving people information that helps prevent the devastating effects of genetic diseases and hereditary cancers.
Karen received her BA in psychology from Northwestern University and her MS in human genetics from Sarah Lawrence College. She is certified in genetic counseling by the American Board of Medical Genetics, American Board of Genetic Counseling, and as a clinical research coordinator through the Association of Clinical Research Professors. Well, you are certainly qualified, Karen. Now to our listeners. In episode 4, we spoke with a genetic counselor, Kira Deneen, who is also our co-producer, and she is joining us today as a co-host on this episode. Today, we are going to discuss the genetic diseases through the lens of an important and innovative program at Emory University called JScreen. Karen, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Karen, let's start.
Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled, Karen. We're thrilled. Let's start with the basics. What is JScreen and why was it founded?
So as Kathy said, JScreen's a national at-home genetic testing and counseling program that's based out of Emory University's Department of Human Genetics. And it was founded to address the need for both education and also accessible genetic screening and counseling to help parents plan for the health of their future children.
Wow. Now, I have to ask, why do people with Jewish ancestry, specifically Ashkenazi or Eastern European Jewish ancestry, have higher genetic risks? Are there other ethnicities or ancestries that also have higher risks?
So, the truth is that every ethnic group has genetic risks that are specific to their group. In the Ashkenazi or Eastern Central European Jewish population, diseases like Tay-Sachs disease, Canavan disease, Gaucher disease are more common in that group than in other groups. I mean, that said, you can also see those diseases in other groups as well. There are different genetic diseases that are common in other Jewish groups, like Sephardic Jews. Sickle cell disease is more common in African Americans, and there's a blood disease called thalassemia that's more common in people with Mediterranean background. So really, it's not that Jews have specific diseases common in their group, but the same goes for other ethnic groups as well.
Now, back to JScreen. When was it established, and what is its mission?
So our program, we're going on our 10-year anniversary, which we're really excited about.
Wow.
Our program was established in 2013. Our mission is really to improve access to education and genetic testing with the goal of preventing genetic diseases. And while our original focus was on the Jewish community, we now offer testing that's relevant to people with any background, and anyone can come through our program.
So on that more general issue. Does JScreen then offer both prenatal and cancer genetic testing?
Now we do. So we've been offering this reproductive carrier testing for people planning to have children for almost 10 years. We're currently testing for over 200 diseases, and hope to add many more diseases in the very near future because that technology is available. We started offering cancer genetic testing nationally in 2021 based on an interest from both Jewish and other communities because of increased risk. Our cancer test includes 63 genes that are associated with increased risk for really over 40 different types of cancer. And those genes that we have on our cancer panel are actionable. And what we mean by that is if a person tests positive, there's something that they can do to help prevent cancer or detect it in an early treatable stage. So we want to make sure that we're giving people information that they can then use to be proactive about their health.
Wow, that sounds important, and it sounds diverse. It sounds like anyone can really benefit from that type of screening.
Absolutely.
But back to the prenatal, how can JScreen help couples thinking about having a family?
So just a little bit of background on the genetics. We're primarily testing for diseases that are inherited in a recessive way. And what that means is, with these diseases, both parents are healthy carriers of that particular disease, and each of their children is at 25% risk for having the disease. And really, for most couples that we test, we're providing reassurance. We're saying maybe you're a carrier for this, you're a carrier for something else. You're not both a carrier for the same disease, and you don't need to worry about increased risk of that disease in your future children. Maybe about 4% of the time we find that a couple is in fact at risk. And for those couples, our genetic counselors discuss with them options to help them plan for the health of their future family. So, for example, that couple may be interested in using in vitro fertilization with genetic testing, where the egg is fertilized outside of the body, genetic testing is done, and healthy embryos are used for a particular pregnancy. So they're getting around the risk of genetic disease in that way. Or maybe a couple will decide that they're gonna try the odds, hope for their 75%, and do testing on the pregnancy to see if the baby's affected. And so the goal of the genetic counseling and the testing is to give people information so that they can plan ahead.
Well, it sounds like they are getting lots of information. So how do you participate in this program? Do you need a referral to access it?
So the way you participate in the program, this was super innovative 10 years ago, but I think we're still doing a really good job. So all you need to do is go to our website, jscreen.org, and start registering for a test kit. And you can either register for the reproductive carrier screening test or the cancer genetic test, or both, depending on your age, whether you're having babies, what you're interested in, if you're interested in cancer genetics. So you just sign up for testing. Now, in the background, we're required to get a test order signed by your healthcare provider licensed in the state where you live. So we're asking for the name of your doctor, and we'll facilitate that process. And the good thing about that as well is when the results come back, in addition to communicating results to you, we can also communicate results to your healthcare provider so that they can also help with next steps that are available locally in the place where you live.
Wow, it sounds like this is very easy and very efficient. So I wonder, do you have to meet with a genetic counselor during the testing process?
I would say, now I'm a genetic counselor, so I'm biased here, yes, but I would say that genetic counseling is the single most important part of our process, because once you start registering on our website, we already have genetic counselors reviewing the information that you're putting in about prior testing, about your family history, about concerns that you have, your age. We want to make sure that whatever testing that you're doing is appropriate and useful to you. We answer questions back and forth via email with the individual. Maybe we need prior genetic testing records that would be helpful in the work that we're trying to do, in the testing that we're trying to do. Now, when results are ready, and if that result is positive, we do require, strongly encourage genetic counseling to discuss those results before we release the results. And I'll talk in a few minutes about how that's done. Genetic counseling is also available for negative results, and also if there's a variant found on the cancer genetic testing. But really our goal is to make sure that we're doing the right testing and that people really understand their results and next steps.
Well, this sounds so thorough. I'm so absolutely impressed with this process. But I wonder, can you do this remotely or by telehealth?
Yeah, I call our program from outer space. So all of the genetic counseling, everything other than having some in-person educational events around the country, and we talk to a lot of community groups, and we'll do some in-person screenings like at colleges and with community organizations. The vast majority of what we do is via telehealth, and all of the genetic counseling happens via telehealth. And that means either by phone or secure video conferencing like secure Zoom to meet with either the individual or the individual and their partner to talk about their results.
Oh, that's perfect. So now the question is, who's eligible? Is it limited to just Jewish people from Ashkenazi Jews, or is it open to a wider group?
So I'm going to say anyone is able to participate, and my caveat is going to be, we have some age restrictions. So, for example, we don't test minors, we don't test anyone under the age of 18. Even for the cancer genetic testing program, we're really discouraging testing under age 21. We want to make sure a person is at an age where that information is going to be useful. But in terms of ethnic background, even though we started in the Jewish community with a much smaller set of 19 diseases back in 2013 that were relevant to that group, we're using now, both for reproductive and cancer testing, what we call pan-ethnic panels. And what that means is there are genes that are included where there may be a higher risk in the Jewish community and someone with Asian background, African American background, Mediterranean background. We have all of those populations covered, genes that are relevant in those groups within each of our testing panels. So it doesn't matter what your background is, the testing is going to be informative for you, and anyone can sign up for testing.
Perfect. Kira.
And I think, so I'm like jumping right into things because this is my area. So I'm also a prenatal genetic counselor on top of being one of the producers of this show. And Karen, you bring up such a great point of pan-ethnic screening, because years ago, a lot of OBGYNs and different providers ordering carrier screening would order one specific to someone's ethnicity. And those panels are still available many places, like JScreen, I believe, but we're really trying to move towards pan-ethnic so that you're ordering one test for everybody. People that come through my office, when I offer them carrier screening, I'm not differing what I offer based on their ethnicity. It's more just, do they want the testing or not? So how do the detection rates differ between ethnicities? Because that's been a big issue in genetics of, I'm mostly Irish background. So for me, I had a higher chance of being a cystic fibrosis carrier. I came back negative. But how do these detection rates differ with JScreen?
Yeah, I'll say that if you decide to do carrier screening, expanded carrier screening like this, it's really important that the technology used is a sequencing technology, meaning that instead of just looking at common changes in a gene, let's say just common Jewish changes within the Tay-Sachs gene, the laboratory is looking at the entire gene top to bottom, where they can potentially look for thousands of different changes in the gene. And then really, regardless of your background, detection rates will be very high. So for the majority of genes on these testing panels, regardless of your background, detection rates can be in the 99% or better. And that's not across the board for everything, but for the vast majority of genes on the panels, detection rate's going to be very high.
I've seen that change over the years where It used to be people of different backgrounds had a much lower rate if they were non-European. And I'm starting to see those numbers come up as we're including more non-European genomes in our databases, because we really started with, I don't want to say exclusively, but the vast majority of the genomes we had in the databases were European based. And so we're slowly working towards this. I wish it was happening faster in the field in general. So, you also mentioned variants can come up. And so I think that's something just for people to define for the audience that may not know this. Variant of unknown significance is when we find a genetic change and we say, well, does this make the gene not work and make someone a carrier, or is this just human diversity and it doesn't change anything? So sometimes it's hard to figure out which it is. For people that are doing this testing, I tend to recommend patients to check back with me or their healthcare provider in like 5 years if they're having more children. What is your recommendation? Because I kind of have to, I started saying that like 2 years ago, but I'm like, I should check back. Like, do you still recommend checking back? And what would be the reasons to check back? Because someone's genetics are not changing.
So we tell people that if they're planning to have another child, that they check back with us. That's not always possible because you don't always know when you're going to get pregnant, but to check back with us before you plan to get pregnant again and see if there are additional diseases on the testing panel. And if so, that they need to update. And so I don't know whether you want to give a time frame or whether you just want to say prior to any pregnancy, check back and see if there's new information.
Yeah, I think that's helpful because things do change. I mean, we started by ordering like one condition. It was probably mostly at the beginning it was kind of the three: the Fragile X, SMA, and cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was like, where's my other one? So now some panels go up to 500 conditions. So it really ranges, and I think patients have a harder time of figuring out, well, when is this enough? Like, oh, this panel is more. But I think one thing to think about is, as you were bringing up, that we're looking at conditions that are common enough, which most of, a lot of these are rare diseases, but common enough. Once you start getting into the 500, they're so rare. So I think that's one thing to look at. And like, what are those detection rates? And what are the conditions? When would they affect someone? Is it going to affect them as a child? Is it going to affect them as like a late adult? So there's a lot of different factors to consider. And I think different companies look at that in a different way of saying like, okay, are we doing, which conditions are we including and why? So, having how many is on your panel? 200?
Right now, 226, but we will 26. Be expanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the importance. I mean, look, we're both genetic counselors, but I think that, if you tell an OBGYN, you're going to be ordering this 550 disease panel and kind of good luck figuring out how to explain that to your patients. I think the genetic counseling component is so important because these are healthcare professionals who can help you understand what the results mean, regardless of results that are coming back.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Yeah, I have a lot of OBGYNs that end up referring to me to be like, hey, this condition came up. I don't know what it is. And oftentimes I've never heard of the condition. But as genetic counselors, we're trained to figure out, well, how can I get this information? What's relevant for the patient? Does their partner need to be tested, or the sperm donor, which in the vast majority of cases, the answer is yes, we would recommend that. So when people do find out their test results, you said, if it's positive, if they've been identified as a carrier, as part of the JScreen workflow, are they then meeting with a genetic counselor? Or like, I know you kind of mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to dive a little bit more into like the workflow of when they get results, if they're meeting with a genetic counselor.
So when the results are ready, then the individual will get an email saying your results are ready. Click here to schedule your telehealth genetic counseling appointment, and they schedule that appointment. We try to make it convenient. Their daytime, evening, Sunday hours that they can schedule an appointment, and during that appointment, the results are discussed, next steps are discussed, any clarification of family history, who else in the family could benefit from testing, and then right at the end of that session, both the lab report and also, within half an hour, consultation note is sent back to the individual and also to their healthcare provider. A lot of times with positive results, also, where we think this may be something really important, we'll also make a call first to the healthcare provider and let them know this came up. We're going to be discussing this with your patient. Do you want to approach them about it first? Do you want us to contact them directly? So we want to be working as a team to make sure people are getting good information.
Yeah, that is very, very helpful to have that. And I think one thing that I hope in the future of the field is that at GYN appointments, people will be offered carrier screening on a more routine basis, especially when they're in their late teens, early 20s. Because right now in the field, most people are offered when they're already pregnant. But really the best time to do it is before you're pregnant. Do you see that that's feasible? Do you think that that could happen, or am I just dreaming too much?
Yeah. So I'm going to brag a little bit because we've polled laboratories before who say that really 85+% of people that samples coming in for carrier testing are on people that are already pregnant. It doesn't make sense because it's then taken away options, if you're in a situation. So because we do a lot of not direct-to-consumer testing at all, but a lot of direct-to-consumer marketing, like getting information out, do this before you get pregnant. Over 90% of people coming through JScreen are not yet pregnant.
Okay.
And so because we're encouraging people to please do this testing before pregnancy.
I haven't heard stats from other labs for that, but I would be very shocked if there were other labs that were higher than that based on, who I've worked with and everything. So that's really impressive. But I think, Beth, you had some questions too about just like cost of the test and other parts.
Well, Karen, I am always interested in costs and bottom line. That's sort of my thing. And so
it's the lawyer in you, right, Beth?
I think so. I'm always wondering about the costs. And this is such an excellent program. And as a matter of fact, we had a situation in our family where two young people in the family did this carrier screening, and calls went out to a number of family members to asking us, would you mind going to get tested? And I had never heard you mention one of the diseases that I was asked to get tested for. I called my doctor and they were a little shocked I wanted to be tested for it. And this was quite a few years ago. And when I got the results back that I was not a carrier, I then called my children. I said, good news, you don't have this. And they said, what? So, now this is much more standard. This was a very unusual request 5 years ago. I think it's becoming much more standard. And I think it's great, this information sharing. I think this is wonderful what you're doing. But I do want to ask, what does this wonderful program cost, and do you accept insurance?
So when we set up this program, we wanted to figure out a way that we could make testing affordable regardless of a person's benefits, whether they have a $5,000 deductible in their health plan or they have high out-of-pocket costs, we didn't want them to say, okay, I'm going to do testing and not genetic counseling because the genetic counseling is too expensive. So the way we work this is we established a program fee, and that fee includes both the testing and the genetic counseling. And as long as you enter your insurance information, and the laboratory has an opportunity to bill, we use commercial labs. It's not us that's doing that billing. That you won't have to pay any more than the program fee. We work out billing with the lab through JScreen. We're a nonprofit. So anyhow, we're charging $149 for the reproductive testing and $199 for the cancer genetic testing. And that includes, again, the testing and any follow-up genetic counseling. So if your insurance kicks it out, we don't cover genetic testing, your deductible, co-pays, it doesn't matter as long as you've entered your insurance information. We have self-pay rates for people who don't have insurance or don't want to use their insurance. And we also have financial assistance for people who qualify. So our goal is to make sure that everyone has access to screening, and we do everything we can to make that possible.
Wonderful.
Well, this sounds terrific. It just sounds, and that sounds very fair to me, Karen, for everything that you're offering, the ease of access. You can be at home, you can take your test at home, you spit in the tube, you get the results, you're contacted. All of this, you've made it so easy for people to access this very valuable information. And I have to say, I think this was a wonderful, wonderful interview. We've learned so very much. Karen, thank you. This information is going to help our listeners access all the resources at JScreen. And JScreen link is in our show notes and on our website, ithappenedtomepod.com. Thank you again, Karen, and have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you. Always nice chatting with another GC.
And thank you,
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Thanks, Kara.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. That's ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. Again, that's ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would also really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app, probably Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenges community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. Steve Holzenbach is our media engineer and co-producer. Myself, Keir Deneen from DNA Today, is our marketing lead and co-producer. Ashlyn Onokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.